So just quickly, before we actually get into a demo, which I know everybody's anxious to see, a little bit about us. So we've actually been building the Gestalt platform, which we'll show you tonight, for a little over 3 years. We have production clients, so that's a fun thing for us. We had a seed round at the end of 2016 led by Osage Venture Partners, which I think some of you guys know. We're based right now in Newark, New Jersey. The rent's a lot cheaper over there. And we have a veteran engineering team, some of whom are here today, and don't you dare try and steal them. We also have a salesperson wandering around here as well. So our engineering team, when I say veteran, every single one of them brings over a decade and a half of experience in the enterprise. And it's a key thing that you'll see in our presentation tonight. So what is the Gestalt platform? And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to the visionary behind it.
Thank you much. So with Gestalt, I guess the first thing I'm thinking about is we don't want you to make you throw out the baby with the bathwater. We typically drop in and just run on whatever CAS platform you happen to have. If you don't have one, we can help you find that. We've got a lot of great partners. We run on Docker Swarm, DCOS, Kubernetes. We don't really draw any lines in the sand. Our platform's cloud native, so you can actually run it on a laptop on Windows or Linux or a Mac, with just Docker and Kubernetes, and you just add more iron and it scales really, really well. The thing that people typically use this for is they go in and they deploy like Kubernetes or DCOS or something, and they discover that whole idea of one cluster to run everything isn't quite true. Most enterprises need a couple different clusters, if not only to separate dev, QA, and prod, but highly critical apps, highly specific use cases. And so they run into the problem of like, how do they federate those things out? How do they provide a single self-service portal that everyone can go to? How do they provide a single place to do all of your audit, all of your logging, all of your security ingress and egress, along with just the integration? And so that's what we do is we can federate however many clusters you have, and we give your developers, your end users, kind of a central portal for basically enforcing that. And there's a little bit of secret to the organizational structure. So we have a service that we call Meta. It lets you map an organization, like what are the business units, what are the app teams, what are the environments they've got, and at any level in that hierarchy, you can plug in, configuration, you can plug in security to say who can do what. We have a full-blown federated identity manager plugged into our platform. You can plug in providers like Kubernetes is a provider. It provides actions like deploying a container. We have providers for things like API gateways and things like Kafka. So you can basically deploy those things as well. We plug in policies, so you can say this dev team can't deploy more than 20 containers on this cluster, on this network. All that stuff is controllable, and we manage microservices quite well. We have a really nice function as a service implementation. It's got all the typical things you'd expect from like logging and metrics. It scales incredibly well. It's got an API gateway integrated, and again, this runs on any of your CAS platforms. So with that, yeah.
Jump to the demo. So we'll actually show you some of this in practice right now. So one of the things about our demo environment here is it's actually running cross-cloud. It's running on DigitalOcean and AWS, but this works in the same principle if you're running in your data center or between data centers if you're an enterprise. I'll hold it.
I get it. So I'll start here with the Galactic Capital Corporation, a fictitious company. We drill into this. You see the organizations you typically expect, like equity, HR. We have a nice entitlement system behind this. It's an RBAC and an ABAC model. We normally just don't expose the RBAC because that's what most people are able to understand. And that can plug into AD, LDAP, all the typical things you'd expect. I can drill down into, we'll just grab a workspace, this sample equity app. You'll see we have the typical dev, QA, and prod. We support promotions. We integrate with just about every CI/CD platform that exists. So we'll grab one. We've got a container here that's already running, but just to show you some examples, I'll just create a container. The first thing you'll do is select a provider. In this environment, I've got a DCOS cluster that's running up in Amazon, and I've got a Kubernetes cluster running in DigitalOcean. So we'll just grab one. I'll give it we'll just call it Web 99.
Nice.
Yeah, but you know what? Nginx, Alpine. If you've ever seen DCOS or Kubernetes, this maps kind of right to their UIs. I'll add a port mapping. All this is controllable of our policy engine, so you can say can do this or you can't do that. And that's really all I have to do for right here. I'm going to deploy that. You'll see that it's coming up with an IP address already. I'm going to add an endpoint. This is how a security person would expose the service. Or you can have policy that says, hey, I know that developer. If he adds an Nginx web server, he can automatically map it. We'll say hello. 99. There's a full-blown API gateway behind this, so we can do denial of service limiting and all the typical things you'd expect. We could require authentication, a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just going to jump through. You'll see if I hit that endpoint now, there's that Nginx web server that you expected to see. So pretty straightforward stuff. Again, we can do this across as many clusters as you'd expect. Now we'll do something kind of interesting. If I go into that enterprise DCOS cluster and I drill down to a little bit.
So we're looking at a different. This is not our UI.
This is the DCOS UI. So you'll see Web 99 is running there in that DCOS cluster. Let's just migrate that. So I'll grab Web 99 and I'll say I want to move it. And I want to move it into Kubernetes, which again is a different cloud provider. So we do that. We flip back into Enterprise DCOS. We give it just a second, and you'll see it's gone. I flip over to this Kubernetes dashboard, and do a refresh.
Also not our UI.
Yes, also not our UI. And you see Web 99 is basically there. So we're able to just pick workloads up and not just move technologies, but also move cloud providers. And you could move it to the same technology as well, Kubernetes to another Kubernetes cluster, whatever makes the most sense. So now I want to just show you a Lambda.
Just a quick case in point. Imagine you have DCOS or Swarm today, and you need to move it back and forth between technologies because inside your organization, you have a lot of different clusters with a lot of different technologies, which in every bank that we've talked to seems to be the case. So this makes it really easy to move your apps around.
So here I'm just going to deploy a Lambda. We'll grab one that's just JavaScript. We support just about every programming language out there. If we don't, you can grab one of our containers and just customize it and add whatever your language runtime is, and we'll make it work. I can do a package, so I could grab your code right out of Artifactory or something. But I can also do inline code, and we can just run code inline. I'm going to do that here right now. So now I'm going to put it down for 1 second.
So we're going to do a plain hello world here, but it could be something much more complex, which we'll show in a sec.
Hello NYTM, I think that's right. And I can set these things up to run periodically. I could change the CPU memory, add environment variables or secrets. There's kind of a whole bunch of capabilities I'm not going to show off here. We'll just create this one. I screwed up. There we go. Code highlighting told me that. And I need to add an endpoint or a trigger for this. And again, we can support a whole bunch of different streaming triggers, but I'll just use an API gateway again. Hello, NYETM, and finish. So that's there. I can click on that link, and you see hello, NYETM. I can jump back here and just say, add a bunch of exclamation points, right? We do an update, jump back here. That's how fast your code is. No CI/CD pipeline needed. You can just write code and you can ship it and deploy it. And you can trigger this over Kafka or message queues or any kind of API gateway. Similarly, we have things like logging and metrics built in, so I can come here and take a look at the logs. And you can see every single one of those runs, what the outputs were, how long it ran. Typical runtime, like you'll see, this one ran in about 3 milliseconds. We're way, way faster than Amazon Lambda. We're down in the millisecond range, and we could go lower with the right kind of infrastructure. And when it scales incredibly well, we'll use up 99% of the capacity in your CAS environment if you don't have a policy to control that. All this stuff, we invert the model too. We manage containers through function as a service. So you'll notice here, I have a policy that says, whenever someone goes to run a container migrate event, I want to hook that and run my own code. And my code is just here, this little lambda that ends in 7CA. And if I jump up and I go to this workspace here, you'll see that I have this lambda that actually does that migration. And that code's actually running out of GitLab. So if I just Control-C that and I paste it in right here, this is the code in GitLab. So again, no CI/CD pipeline. You don't actually have to build code. You can just run it. You can customize this code, and that's one of the core capabilities of our platform. You don't like how we do something, just overwrite it and drop your own code in any programming language, and you can overwrite it just for an individual application, just for an individual production environment or dev or QA, whatever environment you want. So it's pretty flexible from that standpoint. And we're out of time. The policy engine is pretty rich as well. So I'll just show one last thing. Policies. You can see here we have policies for things like ServiceNow, where like ServiceNow, you buy something in a catalog. We actually deploy an environment. We set up a bunch of policies like how much CPU, memory, disk a developer can use. And so you can have those similar kind of policies. And we can complete the loop with like change back and config management environment. So we can actually send all the updates that someone did to a container, or the scale events, or all that back to your change management system. So if you're an ITIL shop, or you have like a really aggressive, like everything must be approved, we can do that while still giving your developers zero latency, where they don't have to wait for anything. They can just go very, very fast. And that's really core to our platform. So that's it.
Nice. Any questions? We got everything? Just like that? I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, sorry, I do talk fast, but it was a lot to get in.
Well, we are currently hiring, so just like the other Not Rob said, we are hiring as well, and we're also in the process of raising a round of funding, so if this looks interesting to you, definitely find me and we can chat.
Is everyone too shy? Anyone got one question?
We have a question over here.
There we go. It's fine. Go ahead.
I got a little confused, like functional service. Who are you selling it to an IT, to a CIO, to a CTO?
Well,
There's two. So there's two kind of typical sales. So one is the CIO who has just been sold by Amazon Lambda, but knows that they can't use the public cloud. So they're very excited about all of the cool DevOps or no ops type things that were just displayed, but they know that in their regulated environment and with the billions of dollars they've spent on infrastructure, they're not going to the public cloud. So that's kind of the top-down side of it. The other use case is you have developers who've gone out, played around with Amazon Lambda or other function as a service, or are really hot on containers, and they've now gone to their operations team and said, hey, I want this tooling. We want to move fast. We're too slow. It takes forever to get my code to production. And so they get the okay to try something on-prem. And so it's... Yes. And several use cases as well. So the streaming use case is one that's proprietary to our platform, that's very, very popular if you've got a large amount of streaming data that needs to be parsed in real time. So So the demo you just saw was on DigitalOcean and AWS. We can put it on Azure as well. So we have a client that's taking a .NET application, and that'll be deployed through containers and eventually through functions on Azure. GCP as well.
It runs bare metal and on virtual machines as well. And so, like, if you have a legacy like VMware virtualization environment that's getting like 40% utilization, you can go and deploy us, and we can get you up to like 80, 90% utilization. Other questions? You guys are an easy audience.
Yes.
You don't have to work too hard.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.